Hello, welcome to Mo Talks. I am Jamile, and we got a special guest, Mustafa. Hello.
Thank you very much for having me, Jamile. Pleasure to be here.
So Mustafa is one of our hosts of Mo Talks. He's recently joined us. We did do a podcast together before, but then he hurt himself playing football.
Yeah.
So he's going to tell us a bit of a backstory about how we got to today.
Mm-hmm. Well, to start with, born Monday, 22nd of April 1996, 5:30 King's College Hospital, quite heavy as a baby. Lived in West Norwood for first 8 years with my mum, dad, and quite a lot of siblings, being that I was the second in the family to have been born just before that when we had a brother 94. Battled for 2 years, my family did, to move out of West Norwood to get a bigger place to live. And won. And now we're obviously been living in Brixton pretty much now gone on 2 decades. So obviously since the last year, as my good co-host has mentioned, we were obviously due to start Mo Talks. And then as you've mentioned, I had played 7-a-side just after I played my latest game for my 11-a-side team. Funnily enough, today it's actually a year since I was in hospital when I had the injury. So broke my shin bone, which is in medical terms known as a broken tibia, and was in hospital for 2 weeks around when the NHS strike obviously happened as such. So it's been a very topsy-turvy 2023, that's for sure. But it's probably been just a small backstory as to how health has been for me, not just physically, but as we're talking about this podcast in general, mentally. So, fire away, my good man.
So what's your mental health background, if you mind asking?
My mental health background to start with, well, obviously I had it a bit difficult as a kid, being brought up in a very strict, very no-nonsense African background. With like most ethnic minority families, they have a certain way of doing things from their generation, and they bring it down, and their way of doing it. It's either fight or flight. You have to cope with it, or you don't cope with it. It does build yourself as a character, as a personality, to who you are. But there've been some real difficult emotional times where we don't get what you want. It can seem to come and backfire on you. But for me, I was diagnosed at 8 years old with autistic spectrum disorder.
Okay.
So obviously, as some of your listeners may know or may not know, autism is a sort of a mental health or learning disability where you struggle to deal with your emotions. So say like dealing with arguments, fights, anything confrontational. It's a very raw place to be in. Anything noisy in general. When I was growing up, I just hated it with real detestment. So that was my first experience with mental health. Obviously, was bullied pretty much along through my last couple of years of primary school, having to deal with a lot of changes, which people that are autistic don't like change. They like to have the same sort of thing for a certain period of time and not have it differentiate or sort of vary in a sense. I think I went to like 3 different primary schools within a few years. Can't remember the exact time frame, but within a few years. One West Norwood, one Streatham, then one about 20 minutes from here. So it was difficult to try and settle in a new place and then make new friends. But I was obviously fortunate in some aspects. But I've had my difficulties, I've had my hardships. I still go through them now, even as an adult, because I tend to think that with what you've got, as majority of people have, they have certain things that doesn't show their best qualities. So it's like everything. You get older, you get to realise what you're actually able to offer, and then sort of have a bigger picture of what you can actually do. So we're all still learning, really. So that's my best way of answering that question.
Okay. And how you find him? How did you find Mosaic when you came to and stuff? How did you come across Mosaic?
First of all, I have to obviously thank not just my GP, my local GP for this, obviously on the NHS. But obviously I have to thank that one particular visit to, I can't remember if it was either St Thomas's or King's College. It was one of those occasions where they self-referred me to the evening sanctuary, which is like the evening sector of Mosaic Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Had a self-referral there for about a couple of months, probably stayed there a little bit longer than I should have.
Yeah.
And like with anything, going back to the first question, dealing with anything new for me, it took me a bit of time to sort of settle in, find my way into Mosaic. It was through the evening sanctuary. I could name names, but they know who they are. They've been of a brilliant help for me. And if it wasn't for them and eventually getting out of my shell, that I usually can be, because I could be, it's like with anything, my characteristics are quite introverted. Over time, you sort of get out of your shell and sort of find out where your best qualities lie. And I've been very thankful, very thankful to the NHS in some aspects for pretty much putting me on a platform and a position where I can at least express myself, so be open-minded to have certain conversations you wouldn't have with your loved ones, which this podcast is not just for me or you or any of the guests before me or after me would very much value greatly as such. So that's my way of how I came across Mosaic.
Okay. And how do you think mental health should be should mental health be taught more in schools? What do you think?
Like anything, it's trying to legislate a certain topic or stigma, like mental health, because it's part of the health. It's part of health in general. Yeah. Part of health goes to a sector where you're dealing with health is part of physical. So physical is part of physical education, PE. I think there should be some sort of incorporation into schools. I'd like to think there is, not obviously to my best knowledge, but I certainly think there should be certainly something that should be done. I think there's more now being done than ever before,
Yeah.
Although it's at a rate where we could potentially try and go as far as we can. But it's a slow but gradual process, really, to answer that question.
Okay. And what do you want to get out of this podcast? What do you want people to get out? What would you get out of this podcast?
I think for them it's just awareness, really, most importantly, in terms of it's okay to have your issues. Yeah. You are who you are, you have what you have, but realise that what you have, you've got unique qualities better than any person you come across in the street. Just because one person could be good at something doesn't mean that you could be good at something else. It's just we need to find our niche. And I think this podcast for me is very, very valuable for people to realise that you are not alone. Everyone is suffering one way or another, and it's empowering for you to be continuing to battle a fight where it's not going to be a battle where you will win in the short to mid-term, but it's a battle that you have got to take on long-term and manage it as best as possible. As much as we like to have a cure for health in general, all we can do is manage it as best we can. So this podcast for me, I think, is like anyone, giving awareness out to people that it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay for you to have good days and bad days, but having the entrustment that there is a platform for you to put yourself out there and actually express what sort of problems you're having, because we're all going through struggles. So I'm quite grateful and appreciative of having someone like yourself and a platform and a place like Mosaic to be having this sort of a podcast out there for the public viewing.
And doing a podcast, is that other podcasts that you listen to that helps you with your mental health, helps to be aware of mental health? Or is it, yeah?
I don't really tend to probably watch a lot of, although there's like snippets of podcasts, certain other topics. I could mention a few, but it mean that I'd probably be bigging up bigger platforms than us.
Yeah.
As such, but to name a few, Sean Bartlett's Life of a Diary CEO, Mike Williamson, another one of those that I've come across quite as much as such. I do like my podcast. I do like listening to stuff.
Yeah.
But like with everything, you don't want to have a certain amount of time occupied by watching one thing and then watching another thing. Like with anything, you'll pick up something and you'll do that for a certain period of time. But then when you've got lost interest in it, you'll have to do something else to sort of keep things fresh. So I certainly think it's a thing that I've wanted to get in, I wanted to acquire, and I feel I need to acquire in terms of anything I want to pursue afterwards. So that's my way of answering that question.
Okay. And how do you deal with stress? Do you get stressed a lot? Or?
Pretty much get stressed at any given point in the day.
How do you deal with it? Do you listen to music? Do you talk to people?
Music is definitely a thing I'd like to do in terms of take my mind away from things. Talk to people, yeah, absolutely. Going to places away from my family household obviously helps, especially when it's something that's very close to me.
Yeah.
In terms of a passion and a skill acumen, skill requirement that I obviously have more than the average person. And it's a hobby that obviously I got injured with, without going too much into information as such. But yeah, I'd find that those are the sort of three things that come to mind.
Okay.
With that.
And was you stressed a lot when you had exams and stuff like that? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, quite stressed. Obviously, like anyone, it's very much flight or fright.
Yeah.
Period towards the end of your school academic year. Didn't do well, obviously, as expected. Probably one subject I probably felt more disappointed with not passing than the other. So I would have borderline just passed, if I may recall, in terms of my predicted results, but obviously it would have been at a time where I was having to go to a special needs school. Again, not too far away from where Mosaic Clubhouse is based. But I was quite grateful still to have gone at a place where, again, it was quite open. Probably not as aware as it probably is now about mental health and disabilities in general. But exam-wise, didn't do particularly well. Which obviously is a piece of paper. They only judge you on a piece of paper. So.
Yeah. So what type of music do you like listening to?
I think the main, I do listen to all types of genre of music, but the one that I think resonates with me the most is opera.
Okay.
Opera. I find that it's very, 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 very authentic and very, trying to think of the word to put it. It doesn't come to mind as such, but it's opera is something I love to listen to.
Who's your favourite opera artist?
Obviously the usual ones: Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin. The three that come to mind. There are quite a few others, but those are the main three that I could come across. But I do listen to all types of music as such: indie, rap, R&B, hip hop, jazz, funk, and soul. There's some good varied nostalgia because there's quite a few. There's quite a few.
What's the favourite decade you listen to?
Decade? Ooh. Obviously, I've got a good mix. I've got 70s, I've got a bit of 70s, a little bit of 80s, generations before me. So in terms of a very close mentor and friend of mine that was in that genre of music at that time, around my age.
Yeah.
But I'd still sort of probably go as far back as the early 90s, early 2000s, early teens, early 2010s. Not much into this era of music as such. But yeah, I've got a good mix of pretty much, say, about near four decades worth of music on my phone, which is about 3,000 or so, I think, on my Spotify. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but it does pass the time, especially when one has to get away from life's predicaments.
What's your favourite song at the moment? That keeps that's like an earworm to you.
Do you know what? I haven't really got a particular favourite. There's so many I can't. It's hard to pick a favourite. Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one. To be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one. It's a difficult one to pick out.
Do you do music outside music? Do you write lyrics? Do you write poetry?
No, not really. Obviously, I did used to play a little bit of music in terms of. I did used to play the drums a little bit, just for a period of time. Actually, I'd done a infamous music tune by the Toots and the Mavericks. Come to me. 5446 was my number. The song was. I've done a little bit of drum and bass, drums on that. But I've done a little bit of I don't know. This is sort of obviously I'm trying to imitate with the camera here, where you're sort of going on the drums, you sort of having your hands on. I think it's African. I don't know what it is. Bongo drums or something like that. I can't remember what it is.
Djembe, is it? Djembe.
Yeah, that's it. Djembe. I was going to ask the viewers if they're watching this, obviously, to put it down in the comments section below. But djembe music was very much good for me in terms of getting my anger out or my emotions and just taking it all out all on that as such. It was very enjoyable, quite enjoyable as such.
Did you have an instrument that you played when you was younger?
Not necessarily. I can recall, nah, not to my vivid memory, no. Although music was obviously something I might listen to, playing it not as much.
Would you like to learn an instrument?
Piano.
Oh.
Did do a little bit of the piano, probably about the first year or two. Yeah, piano.
Yeah, I used to do piano.
Yeah,
I used to do piano in school.
Great instrument.
Yeah, just talk about what have you been anywhere nice, like holidays, in your lifetime? You think that you remember as a child or remember as when you're an adult?
Probably back to my parents' homeland on about 3 to 4 occasions. Stayed over in Abu Dhabi with one of my mum's relatives. So they don't talk now. Time will probably do its healing justice on that. Stayed in Dubai on a few occasions for a few hours. Stayed in Addis Ababa, capital city of Ethiopia, on a as a stopgap, as a stop-by point, going from the UK back to my parents' homeland on one occasion. So I haven't really travelled a lot yet. I'd love to travel. I think it's definitely a thing I need to do.
Where would you go?
I think I'd go anywhere. Just go anywhere. If it means third world countries, I can just go and experience a different culture, a different environment, a different place altogether. I'm up for it. I think for me as a person, I think I'd find it really refreshing and enjoying to go and do something new, like anyone would. Even if it means going across the Channel Tunnel and go and see Paris, go and see France for a little bit. And I would say that it would be something in my life I'd love to tick off. Probably even if it means going around the world once, and how long that ever probably would take me, is probably will be something I would want to do.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a few things, but that's probably one of the few things I probably want to do in my lifetime.
Who's your favourite inspiration? Who do you look up to, past or present? Or who inspires you each day and was with you when he was older? And
That's a really, really good question.
you can have more than one person.
Yeah. I think to most, it's a really hard question. The first person that does come to mind, greatest ever boxer that ever lived, Muhammad Ali.
Oh yeah.
Greatest ever. The
Yeah,
greatest ever. Of his generation, at that time, how he inspired people was just unerring, really unerring. I would say, who else is there? It's hard to really say there's anybody else. Yeah, Muhammad Ali is probably the one main person I would say that just comes to mind.
Cool.
I think really. Yeah.
Cool.
I think so.
Favourite food? What do you like eating?
Well, coming from a Mediterranean-esque sort of background in terms of my parents, I love a bit of pizza. I do. Obviously,
Yeah.
probably doesn't help the weight and other things, but do love a pizza.
Cool.
I do love a pizza.
Favourite thing to drink?
Strawberry flavoured Volvic, strawberry flavoured water.
Okay.
If it was non-alcoholic, lemonade or orangeade.
Do you drink?
No.
Okay.
I don't tend to drink. But obviously, it's in my family's background is it's frowned upon.
Okay.
So wouldn't do it. Know that it doesn't have its benefits. I know why people would do it. Like everyone, they have their coping mechanisms to get up to numb away the stresses of life. Even if it's not alcohol, some could be drugs, some be cigarettes, e-cigarettes. Mine's food. Probably a bit too much.
Do you want cigarettes?
No, just food really.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably my habit, but thankfully not cigarettes either.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my
Okay.
answer to that.
And you like football? Do you have a football team?
I probably regret having a football team. Grew up Man United fan as a kid.
Yeah.
First footballing memory would have been the '99 European Cup final when they played Bayern Munich. And funnily enough, the first actual hero I probably looked up to as a football player, probably not many, some majority of footballing world would know of, Teddy Sheringham.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Teddy Sheringham was probably my hero growing up as a Man United fan. And I probably only followed them because at that time, growing up, they were the most successful team.
Yeah.
Towards the latter, it was only like 2 or 3 at the time when they won the treble.
Do you watch football now? Or?
Probably detest football now
Okay.
in terms of what it is. I tend to find that the lower you go down, the more authentic people you come across. People are a lot more down to earth. It's a lot more authentic, less sort of cliquey, political to a certain degree. You do find that there are some actual down-to-earth, authentic people at the top level, but that's few and far between when it's sort of getting dumbed down, you're being PR trained out of you, which I find sad, because people are supposed to be people, you're supposed to let them be their natural self. Yeah, you can sort of manage it like anything, but you don't want to take it completely out of them, because you'll just get them out of their comfort zone of what they know. So that's what I sort of tend to hate about the current game now. Okay. To answer that question.
Okay. And yeah, you got any questions for me?
Not necessarily. No.
Okay.
Wouldn't tend to think. No, there's not really any questions. Obviously, I would like to ask you, because I would assume there would have been an episode that you would have
Yeah.
done that anyway. So,
Yeah.
no questions for me.
Okay, thank you very much for
Pleasure.
this interview with Mo Talks, and looking forward to be working with you.
Pleasure's all mine. Will be the first of many.
And you've been listening to Mo Talks, so comment down below if you liked it and share it. And share it with your family and friends. I'm Jamile, goodbye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
So you tell me.